Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel for a car review. Today we have a 2024 Lexus RX 500h to review. The Lexus RX is a staple within the Lexus brand, and it's their mid-size SUV. This one is their top-of-the-line performance model and costs $74,000 brand new. However, I'm very excited to look at this car, not just because it's important for Lexus, but because the Japanese, I've always heard, take pride in their work and are always very particular. So I'm really looking forward to reviewing this car and seeing what it's all about. However, before we get started, I would like to thank all of our subscribers. The channel is inching closer to 20,000 in total, which is a huge number compared to where we were just a few short years ago. However, only about 5% of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you could subscribe, it would be a huge help for the channel. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. First, I'd like to start this video by talking about the Lexus brand, since we haven't had a Lexus product on the channel before. Lexus's story starts in 1983 when Toyota Motor Company wanted a new luxury car to compete internationally against the world's best. To do this, Toyota created a new project dubbed Flagship 1, or F1 for short, to create and design the new car. And to create the name Lexus, they used the Latin word luxus and the French word luxe, which stand for wealth, elegance, and of course, luxury. Then, after multiple years of development, Toyota debuted their new car and even newer brand in 1989 with the introduction of the LS400. But Lexus did not start by selling this new car in Japan. They started by selling their cars internationally, specifically in the US market, and the car was then rebadged as a Toyota in Japan, where the new Lexus brand name was not needed. Lexus then quickly built a reputation for high quality, reliability, luxury, and even unmatched customer service. And because of this high reputation and even the introduction of new models, it only took Lexus 2 years to outsell both Mercedes-Benz and BMW, their main import rivals within the United States. And then it only took them 9 years to outsell Cadillac and Lincoln in their home country, the United States, which is pretty remarkable. And Lexus today is still breaking sales records and posting results that put them right alongside some of the most prominent and oldest luxury car brands within the world. A major factor towards the success of Lexus is specifically the RX model. This vehicle was introduced in 1998 as the RX 300, and it was a pioneer within the luxury SUV segment. And Lexus did put a lot of effort into the RX to make it special, and one of the major ways in which they did this was in 2004 with the RX 400h, and this was the first hybrid luxury crossover to be sold in the world. And now the RX is in its 5th generation, and within the model lineup of Lexus, it sits in between the smaller Lexus NX and the larger Lexus TX. And the RX is the best-selling model under the Lexus brand and continues to offer a luxurious, refined, and elegant experience. Now, starting the review of this particular Lexus, I'd like to start off by saying that this car has a really beautiful white paint job. It is called Ultra White by Lexus and has a really nice shine, particularly when it's in the sunlight. But taking a look at the front end in particular, the biggest thing to mention here is the biggest thing here, which is the grille. It is pretty massive on the front end of this 5th generation RX. However, I think it is much improved compared to the earlier generations, which just got bigger and bigger and bigger grills over the years. And most recently, it just looked absolutely terrible in my opinion, as it got to be just too huge and overbearing. And in the grille towards the top is a large Lexus badge, of course. And this car also has very large triple beam LED headlights, which are very bright. The headlights also have washers and cornering lights as well, which is very handy. And my only real complaint about the front end of the RX is that it has just a ton of this black plastic everywhere. It looks sporty, but it also doesn't look exactly luxurious. And I also don't like how there are fake air vents on the sides of the bumper here. But otherwise, I think that the front end of this car still looks very beautiful, especially when compared to some of the older RX models. But the side of the RX is where the styling can get a little bit iffy for me. There's a lot lot going on here. Lots of curves, lots of lines, lots of things happening on the body panels, and even that weird kink towards the back of the car. But it isn't a horrible looking vehicle by all means. It still looks pretty, but it may just be a little bit overstyled. But as far as things to point out about the side of the RX, the most notable thing is this F-Sport badge on the front fender. All 500h models are given this F-Sport badge, but what exactly is F-Sport? Well, this is what Lexus uses to define or signify all of their most sporty vehicles, and this is supposed to be the equivalent of the Cadillac V-Series or Mercedes-Benz AMG or BMW M Division. But some of you may be asking, well, what the heck does the F in F-Sport even signify? What does it stand for? It doesn't stand for fast, not fantastic, and definitely not failure. It actually stands for two different things. The first thing that it stands for is flagship, and this harkens back to the F1 project that started the Lexus brand. And it also stands for Fuji Speedway, and this is a speedway in Japan where Lexus tests all of their performance models. And because this vehicle is an F-Sport, Lexus did give it performance improvements, which includes 6-piston front brakes, all-wheel drive, a rigid chassis, and performance-tuned suspension. And Lexus wanted to make the experience of getting in and out of the Lexus a little bit interesting, and they did that by adding electronic door handles. There is a button on the back of the handle, and your hand naturally presses it to open the door, which releases the mechanism. And there's also a little line on the side of the handle, which you can touch to lock or unlock the car when the key is inside of your pocket. And Lexus added a really cool technology with the RX, which is the dynamic rear wheel steering. This allows for the rear wheels to move left or right, depending on what sort of situation you are in. And this can be used when driving on the highway at fast speeds. The back wheels will turn with the front wheels to make lane changes a little bit smoother, or it can be used to go against the front wheels or turn in opposite directions when driving slowly, such as in a parking lot, which helps to improve the turning radius of the vehicle and makes it easier to park. And it is also used to improve the driving dynamics of the car when driving fast around corners. Now looking at the back end of the RX, this is unfortunately where we find more fake vents and more of this black, gloss black plastic. Again, I wish that these vents were real, and I don't really know why they have so much of this black plastic everywhere. And one other thing that I do not like about the back end of the Lexus RX is that it does not have visible exhaust. As you can see, the bottom of the bumper is just a plain old bumper, no exhaust, it is hidden. I wish that you could see the exhaust on the RX, but more particularly with this trim level, since it is supposed to be performance-y, but unfortunately Lexus did not do that. Anyways, we do have a very large light bar that moves across the entire back of the vehicle. The light bar also has these really cool details on the inside. It almost looks like stretched out L's for Lexus within the sides of the taillight. I really do like that. And we also have the Lexus script here on the back hatch. This has replaced the actual Lexus logo, which used to be back here, but adding the script is what a lot of other brands are doing, and Lexus is as well. And on the bottom of the hatch is another badge, this time for the trim level, RX 500h Direct 4. You can buy the RX as the 350, that is the base trim, and that starts around $50,000. Then you can also get the 350h, which is a hybrid like this one. And from there you can step up to the 450h Plus with electric range, only about 37 miles or so. But this is the RX 500h, with the H of course symbolizing that it is hybrid and the top end trim level. Next, to get into the back hatch of the Lexus RX, there are multiple options at our disposal. You can either go the boring route and press a button either on our key fob or a button underneath the Lexus badge, or you can use your foot to open the back hatch, and that is done by using a sensor underneath the back bumper. You just put your leg under there and eventually it'll beep at you and then start to open the tailgate. And that can be very useful in case if you have your hands full of groceries or kids or a bunch of other stuff that may keep you from using the buttons. But today I'm going to use the button just so I don't embarrass myself or fall over or something else. And then, once the tailgate is open, we have 29.6 cubic feet of space, which is a pretty good amount of room, especially considering that this is a hybrid with an electric battery and motor under there. And this cargo area does offer a lot of useful features, the most useful of which is the power lowering and raising second row seats. There are buttons to do this on the left side of the cargo area. You can lower both of the back seats or raise them back up in case if you need more or less storage or seating space in the back. And you can also use a cargo divider in this area to keep things from flying forward or over the seats. There is also a 120 volt outlet to plug in things, which is very useful. And the back of the cargo area also has a spare tire underneath the floor. And there's also, surprisingly, a Lexus first aid kit back here, which of course you can use to help yourself if you are injured, or maybe if you come across another person who needs help, you can use that to save their life and save the day. Next up, let's take a look underneath the hood of the Lexus RX and see what we find. And under here is a 2.4 liter inline 4-cylinder engine. The engine alone in this particular trim level makes 271 horsepower and 339 pound-feet of torque. However, when you combine these numbers with the electric output of this vehicle, it makes 366 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. And again, this is the most powerful, most performance-y RX that you can get. So those are some pretty big numbers. However, you can still get decent fuel economy. This gets an on average about 27 or 28 miles per gallon, which is quite good. And the 0 to 60 for this car should be right around 5.9 seconds. Next, let's start up the inline 4 and hear how it sounds. Next up, I'll show you guys the key fob that came with this RX. Not too much going on here, but it does have a Lexus logo on the back, which is nice. On the front, it does have the Lexus script at the bottom. There is a lock button, an unlock button, a button to open up the rear hatch, and a panic button. And this car does come with auto start, and that can be used by pressing the lock button twice, then pressing and holding for a third time, and then the car will start for you. There's also a button on the side of the key fob, which you can press, and that will give you access to a real physical key, which you can use to get inside of the car in case if your battery dies on the fob. And there's nice metallic trim on the side of the fob. And I do also like how this key fob has an interesting ergonomic shape to it, so it really fits well in my hand, especially being right-handed. I feel like it doesn't quite fit in my left hand as well. But overall, I really like how this key fob feels. It has a nice weight to it, and it is very luxurious. Now that we've taken a look at the outside of the RX, let's go ahead and check out the inside. So, checking out this interior, I really am impressed. First of all, I absolutely love the color combination in this particular RX. This is the Roja red leather and dark graphite interior. It looks really cool, and I especially love the red leather on the armrest on the doors, the red leather seats, which look especially sporty. And we also have Alcantara throughout the interior, on the dashboard, on the doors, around the speaker grills, and even on the seats, which is a nice special surprise and fits in really well with the 500h. Overall, a very nice interior. I love the fit and finish, and it really does look sporty. So let's go ahead and sit inside and see what it's like. Ooh. Okay, I am now sitting inside of the RX, and right away, sitting in this seat, it does actually feel fairly sporty. The bolsters on this seat are pretty aggressive, so I do feel like I can take some tight corners without sliding around too much. But even though this seat is sporty, it is still comfortable, which is very important to me. The cushions are very soft, the leather feels very nice as well, and the Alcantara suede feels good too. The headrest is in a nice position, so I can still get comfortable in this seat, which is important. And the controls for this seat are down on the left side. You can move it in pretty much any way you would need. And there's also a switch for our two-way lumbar. Unfortunately, there isn't four-way lumbar on these seats and no massage function, which is a shame. However, these seats are still heated and cooled. And I like how this seat has an extra sporty flair with the F Sport logo embossed onto the headrest. And taking another look at the door, this is where we find all of our window switches and mirror controls. All the windows are automatic up and down, which is a nice touch. There is also a button here to electronically release the door. However, if your car battery dies, luckily you will not be stuck in here if you know how to get out. And you can do that by pulling on this button twice, and that will mechanically open the door so you can save yourself. And also on the door is a Mark Levinson speaker grill. This has a 21 speaker sound system in the RX, and it sounds quite good. And a small attention to detail that I like is that within the Alcantara suede material, there are little L's, kind of like Lexus logos, in the side of the door, and I think that's a pretty cool attention to detail that most people probably would miss. And in front of the driver is the Lexus steering wheel. It is completely leather wrapped and has red stitching, which looks and feels very nice. There's also an F Sport logo at the bottom of the wheel, reminding you that this is a fast car. And it also has paddle shifters, which also reminds you this is supposed to be a sporty vehicle as well. There are also plenty of buttons on the wheel. On the left side include buttons for the volume, and on the right side are buttons for the cruise control. However, there are also a lot of unlabeled buttons on this wheel, and that's because these buttons are multifunctional and can do more than one types of things. The arrow switches on the left are used to control your telephone or the audio. You can cycle through your different tracks or control the voice commands in the car. And the menu button below the arrow switches adjusts several of the options that those buttons can do. And the buttons on the right side of the steering wheel can be used for multiple things. One of the things they can do is adjust the height of the heads-up display. You can move it up or down. You can also adjust the cruise control settings. For example, if you want to have adaptive cruise control, you can turn it on, and you can also adjust your follow distance and other features such as that. However, you can also adjust several of the things that you see within the gauge cluster. However, we'll get to that more in a minute. And on the right side of the steering column is a stalk to control the windshield wipers. And on the left side of the column is another stalk used to control the headlights, as well as the automatic high beams, and another button to move the tilt and telescopic steering wheel. And then behind the steering wheel is an interesting looking black panel. Within this panel are infrared sensors that actually read the driver's face to make sure that you're paying attention when driving. And this is something that Lexus uses for their proactive driving system. And how this system works is that when you're driving and you set your cruise control, the car will essentially make all of the turns for you and will also, of course, brake and accelerate based on the traffic ahead of you and the speed that you've selected. But what it needs to do is make sure that the driver is paying attention. So if you look away, it will then turn off that system after it beeps at you a couple times. And then if you're not responsive, it'll completely shut off, and then you have to take over. Or if you take your hands off the wheel, it will also know, because this wheel has haptic sensors in it, and it will know if you're grabbing the wheel and looking forward and paying attention for the system to work safely. And this Lexus RX comes with a pretty advanced gauge cluster screen. Taking a look at it, most of this stuff here is pretty normal. You can see what gear you're in, you can see your speed, you can see your engine temperature and your fuel gauge, but it also shows some pretty special stuff, including your charge, eco, and power. And it will actually change as you're driving. For example, when you hit the brakes, it will then show that the battery is charging. However, then once you accelerate, it'll then show your eco and your power. So it's kind of an interesting and fun thing to watch when you're driving. Maybe a little bit distracting, but I still think it's a pretty nice thing to have. And this gauge cluster shows you some pretty helpful information, including your average speed, your average miles per gallon, all the usual stuff. But it also shows you a boost gauge and even a G meter. And that's some pretty special stuff. I can't say that I've seen either of those in a crossover such as this, but Lexus once again wants to show that this is a more sporty vehicle, so they included that information for the driver to see. And this center screen has several different viewing modes, so you can kind of change and customize the way it looks. There are 3 different options. All of them look honestly fairly similar, but if you prefer one over the other, you can of course adjust it and then have that as your center screen. Next, on the left side of the dashboard are a few buttons. Some of these buttons are used to increase the brightness of the gauges inside of the car. These other buttons are here for the 3-person memory seat, and there's also a button to open the fuel door as well as the rear hatch. And to the right of the engine start button, there is a massive 14-inch center screen in this vehicle. Unsurprisingly, this has a large screen such as this. Most cars are now moving in this direction. And the screen is also pretty fast and responsive. It's easy to use, not much lag here. And I do like how there are some buttons on the left side of the screen for you to quickly access some important things. This includes your navigation, your music settings, your phone, vehicle, and also your vehicle settings. I really like how the map takes up the entirety of the screen, so you can easily see where you're going. You can see the entirety of your surroundings, which can be very useful. However, most of the climate controls are also placed within this screen. This includes your heated and cooled seats, your heated steering wheel, temperature, and all that other stuff. These settings and climate controls are almost always on the screen, so you can still easily access them, which is important. Also, the heated and cooled seats and heated steering wheel are all automatic if you want it to be, so they will automatically adjust based off of the temperature you have set, so really you may not even have to use it all that often. But what's really important is that Lexus still did integrate actual knobs for the volume as well as the temperature. All you have to do is twist them up and down, and you can adjust them however you want. And I do kind of think it's cool how they integrated the temperature controls within the screen itself. You can actually see in the middle of the dial has the temperature itself, which is a really cool touch. However, my one complaint about this is that I wish that these knobs weren't so smooth. I wish that they had clicks to them so you can easily go up 1 or 2 degrees rather than kind of guessing how much you need to turn the knob to know how much you're going up and down in temperature. And a nice luxurious attention to detail that Lexus added for this car is ambient light. This car has ambient light all throughout the interior, on the dashboard, on the floorboards, and around the handles. And I also like how Lexus actually named every single one of their colors. Rather than just having boring red, blue, and green, you have all these special names to choose from. And there are a few physical buttons to make note of on the dashboard. One of them is a button labeled View. This button is used to turn on your camera system. You can press it whenever you'd like and it'll show you a 360 view around your car, as well as a camera facing forward. And what's really nice is that this camera system also includes guidelines so you can see where exactly you're parking. But what's especially neat is that if you turn your wheel sharp enough, it'll show you almost like a third-person view of what your car is doing. It's actually pretty impressive that they have this, considering that there aren't any cameras actually behind the car or in front of it showing where you're going. So it's actually a really helpful way for you to see what all is around your car and where you're moving. And when you're moving with the camera system on, it actually fills in the underside of the vehicle and eventually turns it invisible so you can see what you're driving over, which is really unique. And if parking isn't one of your strong suits, this Lexus makes it easy because of this button labeled P with a steering wheel on it. This button is used to automatically park the car into a parking spot. You can select which direction you want the car to park. You press it and then hit go and let the car do essentially the rest of the work for you. You do have to be careful to make sure that nothing's around you, that you won't hit something that maybe the car won't see, but it does actually work, move the steering wheel, also change gears for you, and eventually does park the car in a position of its choosing. And also on the dashboard are a few climate vents. This one in the center is actually a little bit unique because it has a silver trim piece running through it, so it's almost like a dual tiered vent there, which looks pretty cool. And below that is a pocket for storage. You can stick something back there like your wallet or your phone. There are a few USB Type-C ports. And you can also open this other special door to reveal a wireless phone charger, as well as a lot more storage for other things that you may have. And all of the Lexus RX models have a new electronic shifter. To use this, if you wanted to go into reverse, you move the shifter to the left and forwards. Neutral, you just move it to the left. And then drive is to the left and backwards. Then if you wanted to manually shift with the paddle shifters, you move the shifter back and it'll go into manual shifting mode. And then when you're ready to go into park, you just press the P and it'll go into park for you. And there are a few more buttons on the center console to make note of. One is an auto hold button, your traction control button, and there's an electronic parking brake button as well. And another button to turn on off-roading mode. However, I probably would not take this vehicle off-roading since it's really not designed for it. But if you needed to go off-road, I suppose you could press that button and hopefully get out of a sticky situation a little bit easier. I also appreciate the large cup holders on the center console. There's also a button inside of that labeled push, and when you push that, it actually raises the bottom of the front cup holder. I suppose if you have maybe a larger cup or a smaller cup to put in there, you can then have it move into a lower or higher setting based on the size of your cup. And something else that's pretty big is the center console storage. You can open up the center console both ways for the driver and or passenger, but within there you find a pretty deep opening so you can fit some pretty large stuff in there. However, the current owner of this car has complained that there is not a shelf within the center console to help organize some of his things, so I suppose Lexus could add that down the road to make storage a little bit easier. And as far as the rest of the storage goes, these doors have very large pockets. You can fit big water bottles in here, umbrellas, whatever you may need. And there's also a glove compartment, which is quite big. And this Lexus RX has a pretty impressive rear view mirror. First of all, it looks like a completely normal mirror. It's quite large and wide, which is actually pretty nice. Pretty easy to see what's behind you. All that is fine and dandy. However, you can actually turn this mirror into a rear view camera. There is a lever on the bottom of the mirror. Just flip that back and then boom, you suddenly have a screen showing you what is behind your RX. This is a very nice safety feature because if you have anything obstructing your vision with the regular mirror, such as people or things in the back, this can be flipped and you can easily see what is behind you. And to adjust this camera, there are plenty of buttons on the underside of the mirror. You can use these to zoom in or out. You can move the camera up and down. You can also rotate it if you wanted to, and even adjust the brightness. It is nice that you can adjust this camera in whatever way you want to make it comfortable for the driver. However, I'm not really sure who's going to want to really rotate the camera that much, but I guess it is there in case if you wanted to. And there are a few more buttons up here, including buttons for the garage home link system, and buttons to control the massive panoramic sunroof that is in this car. But these buttons can be used to open and close the sunroof, as well as tilt the sunroof if you'd like. And there's also a button here to close the sunshade if you didn't want to let any of the light in. And there are a few useful and interesting vehicle settings within this display. First, you can see your energy flow between the engine and the battery, and you can also fold and unfold the rear seats from this screen. There's a button to do so. You can choose if you want to fold the right rear seat or the left rear seat, which I suppose is really handy. You can also see your driving assist features and turn them all on or off. And you can also see your different driving modes. We have Sport, Eco, Normal, and Custom. Within Custom, you can adjust things such as the steering feel, the suspension feel, all that stuff to make the drive mode exactly how you want. You can also adjust the air conditioning and turn that on Eco mode. And I kind of find that a little bit strange. I'm not really sure who would want to actually use that. You might as well just turn off the air conditioning if you were trying to save gas, but I suppose that is there if you wanted to make your car all the more eco-friendly. Okay, I've now moved to the back of the Lexus RX, and I'm pleased to say that it is just as nice and comfortable back here as it is up front. The doors still have all the same nice materials on them. The leather is still very soft and supple, and I like how there are still Alcantara suede inserts in the seats back here, which I really wasn't expecting to see. So I can tell that Lexus did still want to make the back seat experience nice just like the front. And to help prove that point, I will tell you about some of the features back here. First, we do have climate control here, which isn't unexpected. This is a luxury SUV crossover and you want to have the back occupants comfortable. However, no fan speed control, which is a little bit strange, but you can at least control the temperature. But we do have heated and ventilated seats back here. This is actually the first crossover I have been in that has ventilated seats for the back row occupants. And I think this is fantastic. This is something that more vehicles need to have because people in the back get warm just like the people in the front. So it's nice to have something like ventilated seats in this vehicle. And the second row occupants also have a very large and comfortable armrest to use. This can be pulled down from the center seat. It also has large cup holders and a cubby area for storage. But the biggest, most luxurious, and surprising feature of them all is that the outboard seats are power reclining. There is a button on the side of the seat and you can actually power recline all the way back or forwards if you wanted to. This is the first time I've been in a crossover SUV with this feature. There are lots of other cars out there that have manually adjusting seats, but it's just so nice to have power reclining seats, and it makes the experience all the more luxurious and comfortable. And just a few other things to mention back here. There is enough room for me to be comfortable here. This seat in front of me is where I would have it if I were sitting in it, and I do have room to put my feet underneath it and also stretch out a little bit. There are door lock and unlock buttons here, and overhead reading lights, which can be turned on and off by pressing the light itself, which is pretty cool. Now that we've looked at the exterior and the interior of the RX, let's go ahead and take it for a drive. Alrighty, we're driving the 2024 Lexus RX on the road. And I do think that this drive will be pretty enjoyable. I think it'll be comfortable. I think it will be more relaxed than it will be fun, but we'll see exactly how that goes. And driving a hybrid vehicle, I haven't actually had much experience with hybrids, but driving this one, it's been really nice. I haven't had any trouble with the car choosing between either the engine or the electric motors, or having weird stages in between and being awkward to drive. But what's really nice is that the electric motor is paired really well with the inline 4-cylinder, so there isn't anything that happens that's awkward with the car. You don't have to make any sacrifices. It feels just like an internal combustion engine car, but you get all the benefits of the hybrid. And of course, with it being a hybrid, you do also get that little kick with the electric motors too. But even though this is a 4-cylinder car, it does still have a decent sound. It's definitely not the worst sounding 4-cylinder I've heard, but it's not as good as a 6-cylinder or of course a V8. But I'll still take it. You still do have really good fuel economy with it, and overall it's still a pretty fun engine to have in this car. While we're at it, let's see just how quick and sporty this car is. So I'm going to put this thing into sport mode. So we're going to start off at 0 miles per hour and see how quick we can get to 60. There's 60. That wasn't bad. Yeah, that was pretty quick for a mid-size crossover such as this. Definitely not knock your socks off, but certainly quick enough for what most people would need and or want. So since this is an F-Sport, supposed to be the performance version of the RX, is this thing considered to be sporty in my mind? And honestly, other than it being outwardly quick, I don't think it's necessarily a sports car or that sporty. And I think that makes sense because all Lexus RXs are made to be comfortable, refined, elegant vehicles. And I don't think that Lexus wanted to mess with that with this new 5th generation, and in particular with this 500h model. They still wanted their customers to know that this is still an RX. It's very livable, very elegant, comfortable, and refined. And that's what this car is. It's not really made to go around corners like crazy or to have a really firm suspension and beat up the passengers and the driver. Although I do think it would be cool if Lexus was to make a true performance SUV or crossover, and if they're going to put the F Sport badge on something, I think it should at least have a decent bit of sportiness to it, which this car doesn't. But I think the reason why Lexus did have this car branded as an F Sport is because people like to have the outward appearance of driving something fast, something sporty. That's what people these days want, but they may not actually want to live with a sports car, which is why this car is still comfortable and refined, but it looks like it's a lot faster than maybe what it actually is. Lexus must be doing something right with the RX, because last year it sold 114,000 units in the United States alone. And it sold better than the BMW X5, which sold about 72,000 in the US, and the Mercedes-Benz GLE, which sold about 54,000. Those are kind of the most direct competitors to this vehicle, so people like it. Looking towards the future, Lexus has designated 4 different pillars that they want to strive towards. And that includes design, which they're doing so-so on, but getting better. The next would be Lexus driving signature. Don't really know what that would be, but probably like refinement and comfort. And then electrification and technology. And those 2 pillars sound extremely similar to just about every single other brand out there right now. And I hope that Lexus continues to improve upon what made the Lexus brand great in the first place. The story of Lexus truly is a rare one. It's really hard to get a luxury brand right and to have it survive and even thrive. But I think that Lexus has shown that it takes more than just building an average luxury car. You can't cut corners to reach that high level of status. But by having high standards, a great level of quality, fantastic customer service, refinement, Lexus has shown that they can build a car that people love and are willing to buy, such as this RX. All right. Well, we made it to the end of the video. I really enjoyed my time with the Lexus RX, and Having a new brand on the channel is always exciting, and there's always a lot to learn. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video as well and learned something new. Please remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and to come back again soon for more videos. Thank you.